So welcome everyone, and thank you again for joining us for today's webinar. That will be the very first unfiltered monthly talk from Curated Health. My name is Hisham Naim. I'm working for Takeda as a global head of personalized integrated care, but I'm here today as the founder of Curated Health. Curated Health is a not-for-profit platform. Hopefully you're all part of it today. And the aim or the motto of Curated Health is connecting people and spreading knowledge. So back in December, I was thinking about what are the biggest healthcare predictions for 2022. And I won't be able to have the answer, but what I did, I asked a couple of health and tech experts to join on a conversation to uncover that. So today we have Frank, Auti, Chandana, Jassa, Marianne, Megan, and Smith, but also from the audience, I see Blaise, Aline, I see also Santosh. You all have your own perspective, and hopefully we can hear that today. So just a little housekeeping before we start. If you have questions, please put them on the panel discussion. You can click on chat and just put them there. And I will, as we go, look at them and share that with the rest of the expert panel. I will also be recording the session and share that in different medium. One last thing, the way we'll do the flow is that I will ask each expert to share his or her prediction. And after that, we will open for conversation dialogue, and hopefully it will be unfiltered, non-scripted, and organic. But before we start, how about if we ask everyone to introduce himself? So Frank, would you like to start?
Wow, thank you, Hisham, and thank you for being here. I'm a big fan of Curated Health, of course. And so my name is Frank. I am leading innovation and entrepreneurship at Basel Area Business and Innovation. So we have the best job in the world. So we are activating innovation in this part of Switzerland, which is very rich in big pharma. So we activate startups in the field of biotech, digital health, and manufacturing. It's great to be here. Thank you, Hisham.
Thank you, Frank. Marianne.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for inviting me today, and thanks for everybody in the audience. I'm Marianne Minahoeva. I'm a founder of Link to Medicine. I'm working a lot with HIMSS organization for Russian-speaking territory and several educational programs. So I'm happy to be here today and to share with you some of my ideas about the next year. Thanks.
Thank you, Marianne. Next one will be Schmidt then. Do I say it's right, Smith or Schmidt?
Smith. Oh, it's perfect. I'm great to be here alongside so many people and look forward to hearing predictions. My name is Smith Patel, pharmacist by background, director of digital medicine at DIME, or Digital Medicine Society, and we are 501(c) nonprofit with our mission of safe, effective, ethical, and equitable use of digital technology when we integrate either in clinical practice, clinical care, or public health. Excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Smith. Megan.
Hi, everyone. Delighted to be here. Thanks so much for having me. I'm a consultant at Health Excel, and as I'm sure many of you know, we are really digital health experts and have this combination of community and advisory services. I have a public health background and behavioral sciences background, so looking forward to hearing your 2022 predictions today.
Thank you. Auti?
Hi, everyone. Really pleased to be here. Thank you, Hisham, for inviting me in. So my name is Ahuti Rai. I work with startups, helping them, so specifically health tech startups, helping them to figure out how to scale and succeed with their innovation. I am not a digital health native. And in fact, my background is 20 years working with transformation, large-scale change and innovation with corporates in industries like retail, tech, banking. So I bring, I guess, that perspective into health tech.
Thank you, Auti. Pleased to have you also here. And Jassa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiasha Zaitz. I work as a business developer at a healthcare IT company called Better. More specifically, my field of expertise is medication management in the hospital setting. And apart from that, I'm also the host and founder of Faces of Digital Health.
Have we lost?
We lost you, Chasa.
Yeah.
We couldn't hear the last part. You were on mute, I guess. Well, Afwan, we cannot hear you.
Hello, can you
yes, now it's better. Yeah.
But basically, I guess I'll just repeat the last part. I also run the Faces of Digital Health podcast, which focuses on digital health and how healthcare systems, more specifically, are adopting healthcare IT and digital health.
Thank you, Chasa. And the last one, who wears a mask? It's Chandana.
I am so sorry. So my computer basically did an update when I launched this meeting. But anyway, thanks so much for having me. My name is Chandana. Is it just a really quick intro, right, Hikam?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Chandana. I'm the General Manager and Chief Medical Officer at Health Excel. It's great to be here.
Good. So then we did around. So Chandana, just for your sake, what we said, we'll have a round of, everyone will have 2 to 3 minutes to share their own prediction, maybe an example signpost and why they think it matters. And then after we'll open a conversation between us and also with the rest of the audience. And hopefully it will be unfiltered, organic and exciting. So how about if we start with you, Chasa? So what is your top pick for 2022?
One thing that I was thinking a lot about was basically what's going to happen with VR in the future, because if you look at the past developments in the last 5-6 years, over 5,000 studies have already been published about the efficacy of VR for pain management, for mental health, for PTSD. This research is over 2 decades old, but has been used mostly in the US settings in various research centers. And in Europe, I'm still kind of waiting to see, when we're going to see a more widespread use of that technology. And I think that with the development and announcement of metaverse, and with the fact that in the last 2 years, we did start to explore how we could have more than just video conferences, but have conferences in a completely virtual environment, that this has the potential to highlight the positive impact of VR and potentially impact the uptake of VR also in Europe. Because if, say, VR and especially VR headsets would become more widely available because they would become cheaper, if this was something seen as having a smartphone, then access to VR therapies would also be much easier, because at the moment, it's still quite difficult because you need equipment, you also need experts. Even companies, startups in the US that are offering behavioral therapy are working through healthcare providers. So you can't really get much if you want to go B2C. So that's what I'm hoping to see, wider mental health positive impact with the help of VR because of metaverse, which I'm not a fan of, by the way.
Thank you, Chasa. I'm not a fan, but I'm excited about the possibilities of metaverse. So next one, I'm curious to hear also from you, Marina, because I think it's a little bit connected. What do you think? What will be your top prediction? Oh, I think we lost Mariana.
She just disappeared.
Yeah. Maybe we scared her with the metaverse. So then, Schmidt, we talked a lot about the booming of technology, and if last year was more about why and what we should do, this year you told me that it's more about the how. I'm really curious to hear more about your prediction for 2022.
Yeah, thanks, Hicham. I think as I was reflecting, and this was a really good exercise when we think about like what next in the field. And when I was reflecting, one thing that I learned is we were in past few years, and I say past 5 years, from 2017 to 2021, in the stage of like, why now? We are trying to prove the efficacy for digital tools. We were trying to prove the evidence for regulators. We were trying to get reimbursement for a lot of these technologies so that patients can have access to it, and identifying new channels for commercials. But right now, we are shifting into now a how-to phase from why now phase, meaning, yes, we know the evidence. Yes, we know around it is working for maybe specific population. How do we scale? How do we think about adoption? You know, we saw this beautiful revolutionary digital health innovation regulatory framework from DVG in Germany. You know, they had fantastic regulatory, very ambitious goals. But what's the next step to that? You know, 50,000 prescriptions per year for 71 million people in Germany is probably not what globally either Germany or people that would have accepted. You know, there's so many layers of components of doing adoption and driving it. We have to think about how are we going to integrate clinical data, sensor data, the data from digital therapeutic companion tools into the EMR workflows that does not add burden to the clinical workflows. We need to understand the tech stack. We need to think about upskilling the workforce, because this is not something that pharma has done it for a long time. This is not what clinical workforce or non-clinical administrative staff has been doing it for a long time. So how do we upskill their skills? And then we also have to think about D&I. You know, we are so good at admiring the problems around diversity, inclusion, and equity, but we don't think it from the standpoint of how to include that. There has been, we did a systematic study, zero academic research on ethics. We don't have evidence going in. Those are the adoption principles. If we cannot build the trust of technology across the ecosystem wide, we won't be able to move forward. So the stage is now for going into fit for purpose care transitions using technology.
Yeah, thank Smith. I agree, because I read the Rock Health report, and what strikes me is that when they look at digital health and telehealth adoption, they find it's the highest among the young, the wealthy, and the educated. And that still shows that there's a huge digital divide when it comes to digital health tools and telehealth in general. And I think I will be curious to hear more from the expert later on. So Mariana, welcome back. Talking about telehealth and digital health tool and adoption, what's your prediction for 2022?
Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you well.
So first of all, I hope that the internet will work for everybody during the next year. Sorry for interrupting. So returning back, I would play today a role like a bit of, annoying nerd, repeating over and over again about telehealth, about the virtual care. Why I'm doing this? Because, it was a big peak of adopting telehealth, and it was around the April 2020. And then the percentage of use of telehealth stabilized around like 20% around the world, despite in many countries like France, for example, telehealth is very popular. But why I'm returning back to this topic? Because it was, let's say, adopting the concept of telehealth. But if we think about the real implementations to release the whole opportunity of telehealth as technology, we still don't see this big wave of implementing the proper technologies, let's say. Because in the beginning, we know that clinicians and patients, they use many other solutions like, Microsoft Teams, Skype, WhatsApp, and we have some limits with these solutions. And also governments around the world implemented their, let's say, COVID pandemic legislation or policies to release telehealth way of operating. But after pandemic, all requirements which we have in cybersecurity, in privacy, in patient data will return back. Plus, on top, of course, we have the whole cycle of reimbursement connected to telehealth. So we should think about telehealth as a proper implementation. And I wrote the article, I hope it will be published next week, about these 5 practical steps, how to succeed in searching for the best telehealth solutions, because it's a big hype. We have more than, 200, 300 different solutions from different vendors nowadays. It's very difficult to actually choose the right one. And in connection with telehealth, I would like to say a few words about hospital at home, because I think all of us experience the real need during pandemic, some sort of, hospital at home functionality in the healthcare system. So that's why I think the wave which we have now in the United States, it's more than, I don't know, now probably 200 hospitals around the US adopting this concept. And I hope that it will expand also in European Union, within European Union and other countries. Again, despite the history of hospital at home concept is very long. In countries like Australia, New Zealand, it's, for several decades. So these are my predictions, my visions for the next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mara. And talking about the element of reimbursement now, adoption and education, Health Excel did a really good article and also that on the health prediction for 2022. And I think, Megan, you covered some aspect of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to speak to that. So thanks again. I think some of our predictions around reimbursement here too are a bit focused on the education piece that Schmidt, you were also speaking to, and thinking about how even though there are a number of solutions already approved on the DIGA, as you mentioned, we saw low prescription numbers. So this last mile delivery has been something that we've talked a bit about, and how do we get both providers prescribing digital therapeutics and patients using them, and how does education play into that? So definitely something that we think in 2022, sort of increased awareness and education will be a big push in trying to increase adoption of solutions. And we've already started to see some bodies sort of organizing these services. So while Cornell Medicine has their virtual care offering, that Boehringer Ingelheim has their digital academy, we've also have the TOEFL Academy in the UK. So we think these initiatives and others like it will start to increase education. But I think also when thinking about how to make this more accessible to physicians, we've also thought about how this builds into workflows. We've seen with tools like UpToDate that when the CME credits are sort of built into practice, this can be a great way to educate sort of during that workflow also.
Yeah, that's true. I think Orca recently also announced that they are building a digital health academy to upskill HCP, at least in UK, if I'm not mistaken. Chandana, do you have something else to add from your perspective?
I mean, I just have a couple of, so aligned with what Megan said, we always wonder if in 2 or 3 years' time, a field force is really essential for pharma, because if we find ways to educate HCPs about offerings, not just digital, but also drugs via digital means, do we really need a field force? Like, that's a question, but that's not a 2022 thing. I think we're still a few years away from that sort of a dramatic evolution. I was just listening to a lot of what everybody else said. I think an interesting question on what'll fade away. I won't say what'll fade away, but it's more for me, 2022 might be like a reality check in a lot of ways. And I saw Ahuti as well said that in her comments previously. And I would completely agree, right? Because we've just lived in a bit of a skewed sort of universe for the last couple of years. I still think there'll be loads of money going into digital health. But when we've sense checked with a lot of our pharma members, the truth is that I think the willingness to pay into something that's a digital health tool is really low. Like, I mean, ultimately, the expectations of this being a quick to deploy, cheap thing, there's not much maintenance costs, but they really are similar to how you would do a lot of post-marketing surveillance for a drug and so on. I just think we'll have a bit of a reality check throughout 2022 on all aspects of this, especially the commercial implications.
Yeah, and the adoption. Yeah, I think it's a really good segue to ask Ahuti, because you're so right about the difference between hype in terms of investment and the real adoption. Ahuti, what do you think?
Can I just add a quick comment there, Hicham? So I just wanted to say that, yeah, when it comes to investments, we definitely need huge amounts of investments for new technologies, because healthcare IT and existing companies on the market can afford to invest as much in R&D as some of the new technologies demand. At the same time, yeah, I think we do have to get into a reality check, because hospitals are seeing that one of the biggest, I guess, disappointments of new technologies is that the return on investment is usually much smaller than expected. So I just wanted to say that.
That's a very good point with regards also to adoption. Auchi.
Yeah, so I think continuing the theme that Chandana just started, and Smit also was referring to some points as well. Firstly, prediction, I think it's ambitious for us to predict. I think I read a paper which was that 2012 was going to be the year for digital health, and 2014 was going to be the year for wearables, and here we are. And it took the pandemic to propel everything and be that catalyst for change. So I think it is difficult to predict. But I, just building on what Chandana said, I can't help but think about the .com bubble a little bit, and I don't mean to be cynical. I'm very pro-digital. I'm in this sector because I love it and I see the promise of it and I want to make it work. But I think my outlook on it is that over the last 18 months, we have witnessed the perfect conditions for a sector to boom, because there's been a burning platform, and we've had innovation ready on the shelf, but then innovation that hasn't been on the shelf has been very fast to be developed. I don't think we've got any shortage of innovation. I think we've seen the promise of tech. I really think we need to stop focusing on the tech and the product. I think a lot of due diligence has been overlooked in the past 18 months. The excitement and the euphoria that surrounded health tech and the potential of it has kind of slightly, made us all a bit giddy. The investment dollars have all gone up. The valuations have been like ridiculous. And I think when you build a boat to sail, it's not about the boat sailing just when it's perfect conditions. It has to sail when there's all sorts of conditions. And I don't think, I think we've had the perfect storm for digital health over the last 18 months. I think things just need to normalize for everyone's benefit, because otherwise we're not going to be able to address the core challenges. We're not going to be able to really see the dud products, and there always are going to be dud products, that just create noise. We need to we don't need hundreds of wearable devices, so it's difficult to see that at the moment. It's difficult to see the signals. There's just a heck of a lot of noise. And I think linked to that, I know you asked for one prediction, but I'm cheating a little bit because there's a part two. So if we want to avoid that, and we all talk about it, we all talk about adoption and how it's an issue, but I think we just need to kind of stop talking about it and actually come up with strategies to do it. And there's the beginnings of that. You mentioned the ORCA program for HCPs, which has been sponsored by Boehringer. There are other initiatives in place, but the story that comes to mind for me is back in 2010, we had a piece of work with the NHS Community Services. And at that time, this wasn't about software as a medical device or wearables. This was about patient administration systems. And there were issues in having people within the NHS want to use text messaging to send reminders. There were issues with people wanting to receive emails from GPs for referrals instead of handwritten letters coming through the post. And whilst the technology has moved on, I think the theme of some of these challenges are the same. So when we talk about adoption, I think as a sector, we just need to get serious about some strategies, and innovators have to own some of those strategies, because who else is going to do it? You can't just pitch up with a product no matter how whizzy and brilliant it is, and it's safe and it delivers outcomes in a trial setting, I think innovators also have to, and investors play a part in making sure that some of their dollars are going into proper change management, transformation, implementation work, not just developing the product to have, more bells and whistles.
Yeah,
I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, actually your point too. It's a very relevant. It helps me bridge up to Frank, because you mentioned something important here. Adoption is multi-dimensional, multifactorial. There's an element of how those solutions are really helping healthcare professionals. Oh, I didn't hear a lot today about burnout of the healthcare professional, and some of those technology will create more workload for them. And Megan, you mentioned that they have to be part of the workflow. That's not something that we see a lot for the time being. And Frank, you were a big, I would say, fun, if I can call this the way it is, about the ecosystem partnership, but also how the partners go beyond the healthcare and start touching sustainability and then other area of our society. I'm really curious to hear about what you think about what you have heard so far and your prediction for 2022.
Yeah, thank you, Hisham. And I have to say, I really agree on everything that has been said before. And I am a big fan of the metaverse, and I think this will make a difference. And also think in terms of technology, today we can do everything. I think we are there and to mostly do whatever needs to be done to finally add more value to care or to improve healthcare. And the matter is now, it's not even the how. I think it's the how is one piece, and it's the where, right? And we know that all the technologies we have, and many people talked about this, they will be meaningless, or we wouldn't add any value if they're not embedded in an ecosystem. And I think that's maybe the first, and I know it's an old principle, a very old principle, but maybe the first thing I wanted to highlight. So without ecosystems and without ecosystem activation, very little of this will happen. And when you look at the big players, they are very much into this. Of course, everybody involved in consumer products, but pharma also. So we are working very close to pharma, and ecosystem suddenly reappeared, right, on the very high on the agenda of all pharma companies, because they realized their products do not add the value they could if they would take an ecosystem perspective and partner with others, digital health companies and others, for example. So I think getting into an ecosystem is one. And I think the complication, or maybe the great opportunity also for startups or for tech companies, is to understand the impact you want to create in these ecosystems. And this is what I see evolving now, right? We have seen the last years reducing cost, value-based healthcare, which is still not there, but starts to be something where people are looking at what type of value is being added, but the value itself or the impact is now changing, and the conversation has really changed. We talked about health in the past, healthcare, and then suddenly it becomes health equity. Then we go larger. We talk about SDGs. We talk about sustainability, and I think that is the change, and that is the change that startups need to get on top, is to understand what level of impact they want to participate in and how they can talk about it. And I'm saying this because investors, if you look at Cathay Pacific now, they are very much looking into the sustainability angle of the startups they would be investing in, and they would force the startups to go in the right direction. Customers nowadays, after the pandemic or in the pandemic, want sustainable products, right? They want things that we will safeguard the next generation to come in whatever environment it is climate or others. And I think that the big corporates also, the big corporates are now very much looking at partnering with companies that care about this. And maybe my last statement, which I heard very recently from Novartis, is that probably impact reporting will become a reality in 3 to 5 years. So big companies will need to report on this, and will need to report if their partners are also on the same boat. Otherwise, investors will not invest. And this is not a prediction; it's almost a signpost of things to come. That's all, and
Yeah.
that's my point.
No, I think it's really good. And we have someone actually, I'm curious to hear from him, also from the audience. I remember every year there is a letter to CEOs that is done by a famous investor. And 3 years ago, he wrote about this. He said, we need to move from shareholder to stakeholder value. And after this letter was published, 100 CEO met and then decide, okay, we will be now more focused on stakeholder and shareholder. I'm happy to share with you the link of this New York Times article. And I think it happens like 3 years ago, but now we start seeing some impact. Ruben, you're someone who actually, yes. Because I don't know if you know Ruben, maybe you could introduce yourself. I'm curious to hear your perspective about this element of impact.
Hi, everybody. That was a bit of a surprise.
It's unfiltered and non-scripted.
Impact. Well, I think we are seeing that across industries and the economy overall. I think, first of all, we need to really discuss what do we mean by impact, but if we put it within the global context of global health, but I would take it one step beyond, which is the concept of One Health, which is really about the intersection or the interconnectedness between human health, environmental health, and animal health. I think we're going to see that more and more and more. Now the WHO, but the OECD and also many governments are actually developing One Health strategies as we speak. And guess what? Digital is at the central of these strategies because it's the enabler in order to do that. Before we had, like 20 years ago, we had the ecosystems, the global health ecosystems, which were rather analog. Now we have new ecosystems which rely on digital connectivity, interoperability, and everything that, and all the very good contributions that everybody has given so far. And now, whereas, for instance, if we talk about life science industry in terms of impact reporting per se, they will be not only reporting on ESG values, but also on all the other indicators and outcomes that will be very much followed. Something that, if I may say, I think in terms of there is a lot of noise, there is a lot of confusion in terms of impact reporting on every industry at every level. I think this is necessary confusion and the necessary chaos, but just the mere fact that everybody's talking about it, it's very valuable, because little by little differences will be chiseled away between private and public sectors, between different stakeholders, and this is very much needed. So if I would give a 22 prediction, is that we're going to see a lot of chaos, really, at different levels, but good chaos, in a way that really trying to, many stakeholders, private and public, trying to leverage the lessons learned, trying to basically continue responding to the pandemic through digital interventions and through more collaborative and ecosystem-based interventions. But also there will be a lot of lessons learned that would need to be translated to policy. And this is something I wanted to say before when discussing about ecosystems. It is very clear that everybody needs to figure out what role they will play within the global health ecosystem, regardless whether it is cost, outcomes, SDGs, whatever contributions. However, it is clear that collaboration will be key. But something that is not really very much talking, the effectiveness or the probability of success of those collaborations between the private and the public sector would be really very much defined and determined by the conditions within these global health ecosystems that are being generated by governments, by policy and by legislation. And those are as simple as, what are the incentives and the risks or the penalties, if you will, of sharing data? What are the incentives and the risk of interoperability? Those are how will it be harmonized from a regulatory perspective in Europe? The whole adoption, for instance, of digital technology. But in order to have adoption at the regional level, you need a harmonization also at the operational, the technical level. So there are different conditions that are more on the systemic level that could only be addressed by the governments and by supranational organizations. But definitely, in my opinion, the industry has proven to be a trusted, valuable, and critical partner in really responding to the critical challenges that we are facing. And I think they will be playing a much more important role in the future. And I'm talking in particular about the life science industry and through digital transformation.
Thank you, Ruben. I put you on the spot, but I didn't regret that. There's some chat, and I see Beatrice reacting out in terms of her point with regard to the .com bubble. I was wondering if what's happened with Theranos, you all have seen the story, the fake it until you make it approach mentality, and also break things and move fast. Is it the right approach? And will we see some impact in 2022 from what's happened with Theranos? I'm really curious to hear your perspective on that.
Hisham, I think what we're seeing is a clash of culture, right? I don't think that if you take it in isolation for each, the Silicon Valley, fail fast approach is where we can truly disrupt and transform and do amazing things. There's nothing wrong with that in isolation, but you put that in the context of a very stodgy, clunky, costly healthcare system where every stakeholder is bound by regulation. It gives a lot of hiding space for lack of adoption, because there's always a reason why you've got to be cynical and question something. But what we're trying to effectively do is have a lot of kind of legacy regulation, which is fit for purpose, for biomedical approaches and traditional approaches to healthcare, but isn't fit for purpose in a lot of instances for what health tech is aiming to achieve in terms of healthcare delivery. But we're not innovating in the regulatory space, right? I mean, there's movement, but the frame of reference is still very bound. The parameters are still very entrenched in that legacy, even if we're coming up with new frameworks or whatever, the language, the reference, the basis for it all is still entrenched, rather than taking a blank sheet to say what's fit for purpose in this new world. So I think in isolation, there's nothing wrong with either. I think it's the clash of culture, and I think culture eats everything. It trumps everything, it trumps innovation and product, it trumps strategy, it trumps everything. And what we're not really facing into is the culture change that needs to happen, 360-degree view of it that needs to happen. And to an extent, I think the Silicon Valley mindset needs to respect some of the boundaries and parameters as well. But I just think we've got this space where nobody knows how far they can push or pull, and what it should look like.
What do you think? It's open conversation. I don't want to call you up. Chandana, Tiasa, Blaise, Marianne.
I'll go if no one wants. I really agree with what Ahuti said in terms of, there's this balance of, yes, we want innovation, but also we want the evidence underneath that innovation. And a few of the clinicians on the call will be like, if we are going to prescribe a specific product or a solution to our patients, and intentionally using patients and not participants, because we want evidence behind it. And as Ahuti mentioned, regulatory innovation is a staggering point in terms of bringing those great innovations out to the market that users or patients have been wanting to see. It's like, we have a problem, innovators create a problem, and then it takes 18 months to even get through just the regulatory barriers before it even goes there. And we would be tackling a new problem by the time it comes out. So I think from the ecosystem wide, yes, there are a lot of frameworks. However, there are not a lot of frameworks that are rigorous, that are efficient, that could do those evidence analysis on a basis. Payers are struggling right now to reimburse that. They know that it works. However, last week, Aetna, which is one of the larger healthcare payer in the US, denied 13 prescription digital therapeutic apps. That includes Pear Therapeutics, Reset, or Somras, the first PDT that came out. So not having that having the inconsistency of the evidence and standardizations across the ecosystem, which I think we talk about the public-private partnerships, the collaborations. I think leveling and setting up that bar has yet to be nailed, and unless we don't do that, we won't be able to move as a field forward. Wonder what others think.
Yeah, I actually agree with you that it's probably the lack of standardization, because when I read that Aetna thing as well, I was thinking about it. There are definitely some digital therapeutics or digital health companies that have done everything by the book. Some of them have been, researching and running studies for a decade or longer. And, that really begs the question. It's probably not an outright lack of evidence, but rather what's accepted, what's transferable, and I guess updates on this as well. And back to what we spoke about at the very start, which is a lack of awareness of its existence or its accessibility to the people who use it ultimately, physicians and patients. So it's, in a way, it's kind of sad because, if you look at a lot of the companies, they've gone above and beyond to actually publish, get peer reviews, and they've done RCTs, which would be considered the gold standard, and if you compare it really with drug trials, they're not far off in terms of the study size, the study design, having a control arm, the length of time, et cetera, et cetera. So I think something else is systemically missing, rather than, it's not true that all the companies out there are trying to run fast and, just avoid or bypass some of the requirements. And that would just be my perspective. But of course, there are a ton of them out there who are trying to do that, and maybe slowing down the industry as a result as well.
Justin?
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to avoid the slow pace happening in the industry, because we see exactly what you said, that just evidence is not enough. Then somebody's going to say, yeah, but you need peer review evidence, So it's the fact that studies are out there is now kind of tainted by the fact that companies themselves did these studies, and that it's not clear how these studies should be done in the first place. So that, I guess, shows us that we still have a long way to go. At the same time, we're listening about AI trends and where AI is going to go and how far AI is going to come with diagnostics, where at the same time, we don't even have same data standards in place. So we could actually create large data pools to create a reliable AI algorithms that doctors would trust and would be transparent. So, from that respect, I really am happy to look at one of the predictions that I also kind of made, was that we are going to see the realization that we need basically same data standards. And we already see that across Europe, there's a huge uptake of OpenEHR, which is just created, with the help of clinicians that design these data models. And yeah, it's been used in the NHS. The previous health minister said that data should be separate from applications. And once we see the higher uptake of that, that only gives us the basic component and an opportunity to even start doing something. Because even though the data is well structured, it's still each hospital has it. There's a lot of complications. You don't want to share that data just because it's in an open standard. So then we have to solve how we're going to address access to this data and creating these large data pools that would enable us to create algorithms for a specific population, which is, again, a different problem in AI that you need to watch on bias, on race, and everything else involved to create meaningful solutions for healthcare. So one problem on top of the other, I guess.
I think if I can,
Hisham,
I was thinking, I think we need to be optimistic also, right? And I'm an optimist in that way. I think in Europe we are making good progress. I believe also we have seen the developments in Germany, in Belgium, and others to access of digital technologies. We don't have to forget, and I agree about what the last speaker was saying, that we don't have to forget where we come from. I mean, most of the hospitals in Europe don't have any standardized data. In most of the hospitals in Europe, the data is fragmented between departments. Even between departments, we don't have data sharing in the same hospital. So we have a long way to go, and I think this optimism is needed because of the value we will add to the system. So I believe we're on the right track in Europe. I would say we are now on the right track.
Yeah, I agree. Blaise.
I think Marina was first. Maybe you want to.
Yeah. Thank you. Ladies first. So I just wanted to add that actually we have the huge lack of clinicians inclusion. Yeah, so we love so much to discuss technologies among people focused on digital health. So a very simple example that if you open any website about digital health, and you will try to find, for example, you have a specialty like cardiologist, and you want to find technologies exactly for your specialty. You will not be able to even search, or there is no, let's say, hashtags. Yeah? So, for example, I made a promise. When I'm writing an article, I give the exact examples, technologies applying to the exact medical specialties. And of course, we have also the lack of educational process. Yeah, programs. There are no programs in the standard curriculum right now. Recently, I found the first time on Coursera the course about telehealth. It's after the boom of telehealth. Yeah, we have a very few courses about artificial intelligence for healthcare. So this is a big process, and my good friend, she's a clinician in Germany, she complained, she almost was like crying. She said, I feel myself like a unicorn because nobody among my colleagues, they don't study anything about digital health. So we should change this. Otherwise, we will sit alone and discussing with each other the same topic again and again. So I am voting for clinicians, inclusion in everything, in startups, in all our processes, in all discussions, and so on. Thank you.
I really like that, and I think we should all read what Megan wrote about the prediction, because she talks exactly about it. And Megan, Chandana, you are more than welcome to organize a session dedicated to that. I mean, I will be the first one to raise my hand and join, and about how we can upskill healthcare professionals and reduce the workload and the burden in terms of digital health technology. Blaise.
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment on AI, because I was a bit surprised that no one talked about AI for the first 45 minutes. I mean, AI was such a big fad in the past few years, especially in the medical space. There was really an inflation of expectations around AI and so on. And now it seems like people just don't talk about it. And it's a bit surprising, because I think AI is really happening behind the scene. I work for an engineering company, and we built digital health products for a number of clients, be it startups, medical devices companies, or big pharma companies. And I can see that there are some really concrete applications of AI now which are coming, both actually in the clinical care setting and in the routine care setting, and also for diagnostics. So medical AI becomes more and more applied to these areas, and maybe not in a very fashionable way. So it's probably not very flashy what's happening there, but it's very useful. I see a lot of projects in pharma in particular across different therapeutic areas, be respiratory, be neuroscience, ophthalmology. And there will be really a good contribution of AI to clinical decision support, for example, for doctors. So again, AI is not going to replace doctors, but it's going to really improve their power, multiply their capabilities. So the doctors will be augmented with AI. And it's not really a prediction, it's actually something which is happening now because we currently building these products for pharma companies. For example, there's a lot of applications to better optimize the dosing of drugs for different types of drugs, which needs a very adjusted dosing for different types of patients. And there AI can really play a role in giving a kind of scoring system, also indicating some drivers behind the score, because we were talking also about explainable AI, and I think doctors really want to understand where this kind of score provided by AI comes from. So there is now more and more explainable AI frameworks, as well as ethical AI frameworks as well, which is a slightly different topic. I see also AI applied into clinical care, clinical trials, sorry, as I was saying before, for example, for optimizing endpoints. So that's very critical for pharma companies to capture endpoints properly in clinical studies, because a whole study might be jeopardized by a lack of being able to measure it properly. And with some AI tools now, we can have a better objective measurement of some endpoints instead of something which is done subjectively today by different doctors, and they have different opinions, and therefore there's a lot of variability. So you can remove some of this variability through a machine learning in particular. And last but not least, also in the diagnostics fields, I think everyone has heard of Dr. AI, who's able to diagnose better disease A versus disease B. And we have concrete examples, and we worked on that on some machine learning models, which are much better at predicting if a patient suffers from, I cannot name really some concrete indications here because of confidentiality, but disease A versus disease B with a very higher accuracy. And this will come on the market pretty soon. So I'm quite optimistic that AI has found its way. Maybe we're not going to have general AI in the next few years, but we'll definitely have AI helping us develop better drug and having more personalized drugs and also better diagnosis for multiple patients according multiple therapeutic areas.
Yeah, Blaise, you know I'm optimistic by default, but with AI, I'm sometimes scared from what might happen in the future. I recently watched a movie from Netflix that talks about biases in AI. It's a docuseries. It's really interesting. I invite everyone to watch it, because most of those AI models, it's not the problem with the algo, it's the problem with the data you put on the algo. And sometimes the data might be biased. And there are examples from real life story about whether it's in a policing or the juridic system, or even in healthcare, where AI made the wrong judgment call. And so what will happen in the next coming years? Will we prevent those biases when we design algorithms?
If I can just comment on what you just said, Isham. So actually, I think we're learning from the mistakes, and there are a lot of cases indeed in the news of biases in the different algorithms. But now there's more and more emphasis on data cleaning. So really looking at data sets, how you collect data, about how you structure this data, which data you use. And there's a lot of improvement I see when I talk to AI specialists. I'm not an AI expert myself, but I talk a lot to these experts. And they spend now a lot of time on the data science, even before starting to build the product. And probably in the past, they were rushing too much into the product as soon as they had a data set, and that led to maybe some dramatic events. But now I think people have learned how to build safer AI through better work on the data upfront.
And if I may add to what Blaise and you, Hisham, has said, it seems it's a call of optimists, if you will. Something that also is really happening, and I think in 2022 we will see it, is really out of necessity, out of the challenges that we have all experienced. There is the creation of these, if you will, algorithm auditors, right? And this is something that we will see in particular in highly sensitive industries such as healthcare and life sciences. And because often, and this is what we are beginning to see in particular in the discovery, in the research and discovery, which is has been exponentially accelerated thanks to AI in particular and deep learning approaches, is really that the outputs or the outcomes of the insights of these methods actually are not really well understood by the scientists themselves. So, and we will get to, and I think that we will see agencies and authorities which will be independent, really trying to make massive efforts to try to audit these algorithms, to try to reduce the biases, as you guys were saying, but also looking at the quality of data. But it's, in a way, this is the benefits of the global health, digital health ecosystem, because now all these startups, small companies, they are under pressure to deliver real-time quality data themselves. So there will be, let's say, a symbiotic improvement on the one hand on capturing and capturing, storing and analyzing quality data. And on the other hand, there is this emergence of these auditors trying to make sure that the algorithms are done properly. Nobody, I mean, no entity really has the right solution, but we have this convergence and we have this inertia within the global health ecosystem. The only thing that we need right now is really to get the right policies, the right legislation that also is being developed as we speak. So basically everybody's trying to build the path as we walk over it, right?
Thank you, Ruben. And we are on top of the hour, and I really appreciate the engagement and the input from all of you. Like I said, I did the recording, so I will be sharing that with everyone. And also I will do a short summary for the key takeaway from our conversation to then share that with you and with the rest of the audience. Thank you again, and hopefully we can do that next month again for another topic, and not as a panelist. I don't want to abuse you, but maybe you can be a participant next time. Thank you very much again, and wish you a good weekend.
Thank you, Hicham. Thank you, Hicham.
Thank you.
Merci à toi. Au revoir.